You've
Hi.
got a lot of fans.
No.
So, do you remember the first time I ever interviewed you?
Yeah, I was hoping not to talk about that.
Well, yeah, because for me it was traumatic. So I'm used to, I'm supposed to start off with a question, but we've known each other so long, I figured I start off with a story. And so the first time I interviewed you, I was the moderator at an event smaller, well, about this size, yeah, but not like the whole thing.
Small.
And so I introduced him and I explained who he was and I said, so this is Nalden. And then somebody rushed on stage and they said, Nalden is still parking his Tesla. Can you fill in for 16 minutes? So I had to keep the audience entertained for 16 minutes, so thank you for that.
We now have 24 minutes left.
I'll just talk for 24 minutes. So I also remember when you first came to me with the concept for WeTransfer, but can you tell the audience how you got to that?
So at the time I was blogging, and one of the visitors of that blog, my current co-founder Boris, basically asked feedback about a tool that he developed within his advertising agency, which was a transfer tool to send some files. And I was eager for a new adventure, because I mean, through my blog I've met many people, seen the world, made me more entrepreneurial, and I was making a bit of money. And
you wanted to make a lot more.
Well, I was interested in a new adventure, which was all about sharing. And you know, the DNA of a blog is sharing. And I figured, how about making a file sharing tool that even my dad can understand how to use it. So that was my personal motivation, and I saw a lot of potential in what Buzz already had developed internally within his agency. And after a few drinks and a few bottles of pretty good wine, we figured that we would take on You Send It at the time, and we would call ourselves WeTransfer. And when you're drunk, it's really hilarious. Yeah, we ended up never changing the name and really building a business. So it started quite naively as an experiment, almost as a joke. But from the moment we sort of launched in beta, it started to grow organically really fast, and the first 3 years was all about catching up with the growth, figuring out how to do shit, and before we know it, we were really turning into a proper business. And that mental note of, oh shit, we're really a business, that took us really 3 years to realize.
And do you remember that moment where you thought, like, this hobby is now turning serious?
Well, I remember before, because we weren't earning any money, it was only costing money, so it was basically eating bread all day long. That moment when we sort of brought in people that helped us stabilize the business, from a financial point of view, from a structural point of view, that was when I really saw the click, like, okay, this is becoming more exciting now. It's less of a churn to run the business, and it's more pleasure to actually see talent grow, see the business grow. Yeah, and that was like around 2012. We started in 2008. We went live in 2009. Always bootstrapped the business, and yeah, at one point we broke even with a really difficult business model. Really had to educate the whole media industry, which again took 3 years, and at one point we hit that tipping point, and from then it started to kick off.
So I remember the first time you told me, and you weren't live yet, and I remember it so well because I was embarrassed, and I thought I'll just walk through the hallway, and so I can think about how I'm going to talk my way out of this, because it sounded impossible, and I just didn't get it, because I knew You Send It was so big. Mm-hmm. And you said, well, it's sort of the same thing, but then, cooler. And I'm like, cool. I just didn't get it, yeah. But is that also like the real innovation of WeTransfer? Is it, I mean, what is the difference? Because...
So I think from an early point of in time, we realized that technology is amazing and it can allow you to do so many things. Especially when the interface is really easy to use. And so we always doubled down on design, and for a tech company we were always very much design driven, building a UX that my dad to start with was the benchmark. So we always did things our way, and it still results in a very MVP kind of software and app. And I guess having a vision of we didn't want to interrupt our users with ugly banner ads, but really wanted to allow them to discover cool stuff through wallpaper images. That helped give us a lot of karma and goodwill within the creative community. You know, we highlighted billions of impressions just to showcase cool work. And at the same time, slowly, bigger brands wanted to advertise on our platform. So that was a huge compliment. And we always kept tweaking the simple transfer tool to make that more stable, to make that more reliable, more trusted. And
less dependent on Flash.
Yeah, we started out in Flash. Remember Flash? Yeah. So we basically rebuilt the servers back in 2012 to make it run on AWS. So we did it in Ruby, so it was scalable. And basically did the same just a few months ago.
That's one of the things we were talking about, product management recently, and then later I thought, product management, are you actually managing the product? It's always been the same, right? But so what is your roadmap for development? What are you working on?
So just recently, we tried to be a bit more structured. The past 6 months, I think the company has changed a lot. We hired a lot of new talent, managing developers, designers, creating a proper process, proper roadmap. And I'm really excited because later on we're presenting the new redesign to the company. Not sure if I am allowed to share this.
Share. You can share anything.
Our investors are in the room,
it's all
so
off the
I have to
record here.
behave, you know. So we are getting more structured because, like I said, it was all about catching up with the growth, with the organic growth, and that in a startup environment, you don't have time to deal with structure. You don't have time to think about processes, how to do things well. So in being reflective, I think we made all the mistakes you can make in a startup. I think we learned from most of them, and now we're trying to apply those learnings and get a proper structure to launch a product. We start with the website again and build an ecosystem around that, and follow up with structured releases every 3 months. So yeah, I'm quite pleased that we now have a team that can do structured releases.
So the mistakes you make are always the most amusing, and the stuff you learn from. So do you have some like the mistakes you made that you can share, which are?
Yeah, it's all the cliches, right? It starts with people. Hire great people, and a wrong hire can set you back for so many months, years even. So that's lesson number one. When you start dating someone, get some proper dates before you marry someone, I guess. Because a divorce is really expensive, you know. Advertisers, treat them well, or they will never come back and tell their friends not to advertise on your platform. I think.
So this actually happened, right?
Yeah. I kind of told Samsung early on in the beginning that their ads were ugly, in a really Dutch direct way. They were a bit offended. Yeah, in another way, with a smile. But they, through the telephone, you don't see me smile. So they were offended, basically got the whole company advising not to advertise on WeTransfer anymore. So that, that was a big hit. It cost us a lot of money, but luckily, we became friends again, and they're back with advertising at our platform. So. But at the time, when you're growing rapidly and have to pay the hosting cost at Amazon, then it was harder.
So everybody hated you for a month. Yeah, cool. And then you raise money.
So we never needed money. This is a really weird thing to say in the end. In the end, you need money as you need oxygen, right? However, we were at a time that we became that we were a profitable company, and we took on an investment of Highland Capital to help us get more professional, to create financial stability, and really add brilliant minds to the board with bright insights and a really, really great network. So it did help to build a better bridge towards the US, which is our focus market for now. And grow faster over there.
And take money off the table? Did you take some money yourself as well in the round?
Yeah, they joined, so some shareholders had to sell a bit of shares. Yeah.
All right.
But most of it is just for the company.
Okay. But are you rich now?
I don't know. I have 10 euros on me.
You have 10 euros on. All right. You're doing great. That's all the money you need at the next web conference. So is the company different now with money? I mean, I always envisioned WeTransfer as like hipsters and just like loud music and joking around because you're not changing anything.
People label you in different ways, right? And I think as an entrepreneur, you have to just keep going and prove that you're up for the next label that is happening. So I think we're doing the same on our own pace. We're hiring a lot of talent. Some are looking like hipsters maybe, but most of all they're really bright minds. A lot of did change. In the beginning we were doing conference calls with just an iPhone on speaker mode, and now we actually can afford those really cool tripods for conference calls. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's you didn't buy those expensive designer chairs, right? Because that's always a bad sign. Like I get the tripody things, yeah, but the expensive designer chairs.
I don't know if we
smart.
have designer chairs, but I think you should always get those for free.
I remember that when you had the blog, you said, "I hate paying for stuff. I get everything for free." Is that still a thing for you? Like your hobby?
That was then.
How you pay for stuff now?
I pay for stuff now, yeah. I have 10 euros.
Like the rest of us. So you're all very quiet, like the quietest audience I've seen all day, which is amazing. But if you feel like I miss out on a question, feel free just to shout.
Basically, Boris didn't prepare well. You need to help him, guys.
Well, in all honesty, I prepared and he prepared, but he left his notes in the car. So, true story, right?
True story.
Yeah. So, although I'm, so if you feel like, hey, you're not touching out on this, you can just shout because it's quiet enough to hear. Okay?
You can also tweet me directly and I'll reply.
Are you checking your phone while you're talking to me?
No, later.
So tell me, what's the new product that you're building? Is it just this, or are you going to go into different markets as well?
So we're working up towards this whole reset moment, and we're starting with web. So in and around September, we'll be relaunching our service and start to iterate from there, which is basically doing things better. This whole research allows us to do tech development much better, much faster, deploy new features faster. Think about stupid stuff that should have been in the product already, like image previews, stuff like that. We'll be launching apps, especially for our Plus customers. We start launching.
Can you talk about the apps a little bit? Because I know everybody's talking about mobile, everything is moving to mobile. But then I get the impression that your market is not really mobile. It's much more like designers sharing big files with each other.
So essentially what WeTransfer does is keeping people in their flow. So we're most of all seen as a productivity tool, and we want to own that space of productivity. We want to apply our design thinking to what we do with WeTransfer, is making sharing files as seamless as possible without interrupting our users too much. We want to apply that to other services that could need some work. So that's essentially what we set out to do. And we start with WeTransfer, we start building the ecosystem around the website, involving apps, obviously. You should, on your desktop, on your mobile, you should have apps that allow you to do the same but better or faster. With all
Is it like the iCloud strategy at Apple, where they put an I in front of everything, and you're going to put a WE in
no,
front
it's
of...
our own strategy. I mean, in the end, we want to make software a bit more human. We want to add character to it and some sense of style, and at the same time, keep providing a platform to highlight all of those amazing creators in the world that make epic stuff.
So, are you going to have a Wii photo, Wii...
Who knows?
Who knows? Yeah, really? Well, you got funding for something. So,
No, so the focus first is on WeTransfer, make it huge in the States. We're already on a good track over there. We have Troy Carter, who joined our board, who was basically managing Lady Gaga and made Gaga Gaga. So that helps a lot with all the partnerships we do to, really provide an epic service for all of our users.
All right. I asked you how the company changed, and you said it's sort of the similar, but I want to ask you something about company culture, because you've been a founder, you're somewhat a rock star or a very visible guy. You're not like the...
Am I?
Well, you're not the typical geek who's hiding behind a keyboard. Like you're,
No.
I don't know what the word is, but you're Nalden. Do you see that in the company as well, and is it something that you spend time on, like the company culture? Is it something that you think about, and do you have tricks for that?
So for now, I still think company culture starts with its founders. They hire the people, and they hire people that they think can make the most impact. And by behaving naturally, that we all do, you create culture. You don't want to manage culture. Culture just happens to exist by doing work, by having fun together. And I'm sure at one point your company becomes that big that you have multiple leaders and multiple people managing or trying to steer that company culture. But in the size that we're at, which is around 50 growing up to 100, it's still run by gut feeling and just being nice to people.
All right. Question. Finally. Yes. Just stand up and shout.
I have one. How do you defend your market? You always talk about simplicity, design, but it's a really fairly simple product for people to copy. And in the next couple of years, everybody's seeing your success. So how do you defend yourself?
So technically, it is always, it's not hard to mirror a similar service. However, we've seen our competitors the past years try to copy our UX and our mental model, or how people emotionally engage with WeTransfer, and they always fail in that sense. So we're doing something right in creating an experience that people actually trust and like to use, and we want to keep building on it, keep improving that. So people always talk about simplicity, but in all fairness, it's complexity, because it always looks and works simple on the front end, but it's pretty complex to deal with that on a back end side. And we just keep going with that. I mean, it's in our DNA. Other companies don't have that DNA. Google has a different way of thinking than us, for example. I hope it's the people that make the difference. That's sort of it.
I have a question. So, I mean, the title of today's talk is about how to build a sexy company, and I think we haven't really quite addressed that yet. So, I think a lot of what makes WeTransfer so sexy is the interface design and simplicity of it. How did you guys come to this design? Is it just because you were drunk and you thought it was funny and then you drew something? I mean, in that case, then the biggest lesson that I've taken out of it is that I should drink more. So how do you guys do this, and do you guys go for any sort of user testing?
Yeah.
And when you're talking about refinement of your design, how are you basing your decisions on these for your next iteration?
So when we started, apart from drinking a bit, it was actually a model what I was already applying on my blog, which was all about this full screen advertising and showing images. And what we did with WeTransfer is basically copy that model and add a transfer tool next to it that, or on top of it, that gives you one overview to do everything you need to do. And that was sort of naively a very good move, because you don't have to sign up to start using WeTransfer. It's the level of accessibility that makes it so easy to use. You don't have to buy into, you don't feel like you're being sold something to upgrade to a better account. It's just, we try to get out of your way as much as possible when using the service. And it's keep iterating on that, and we do a lot of user testing every month, basically, from guerrilla testing to proper A/B testing and user testing with geographic users everywhere in the world. That allows us to make better design decisions. You know, we listen all the time to our users with all the feature requests coming in from support, and try to build the product together. If people want to add more personalization, we want to give it to them and test within different regions how people respond to that. So everything we do is together with our users and is being tested. And I'm quite pleased that I'm super excited, but I unfortunately can't show you something. But hopefully in September that makes more sense, and you'll see like the result of all of those processes. Thank you.
So you raised money not in the Netherlands, right? Where's the investor from?
Originally, it's a US-based firm, but this is their European fund.
Right. Were there Dutch investors that showed up afterwards and said, like, hey, how did we miss this?
Not that I know.
Right. Do you think they missed it?
I'm not too focused on that. I just want to create an epic product and keep make sure that we really get foot on the ground in the US. So in September, our office will open in LA, and quite excited to work towards that and build a team over there as well.
Yeah. And how about entrepreneurship? And we have time for one last question, so if anybody has one, let's go to the question.
Okay. Are you a designer by trade? And after that, how do you make sure you hire the best designers in the industry?
I'm not a designer by trade at all. I'm also.
Sure sound like one.
I think that's a compliment. No, I just really like good design. I've learned by doing, but I'm not a designer at all, and I want to stay away from being seen like that. However, I think, have a talent in spotting other people's talent and understanding design and code good enough or well enough to at least being able to have a conversation with a designer or engineer, and then it's up to them to prove their worth. And along the years, we've really had a lot of young talent that really excelled, because what I do well is creating a context where people can grow, and that's what I want to keep doing, and that works for designers and both engineers. I think if we can get better in structuring that, then everybody grows within the skill set. So no, I'm not a designer.
So startups are like the big thing now, right? And it attracts everybody, like the gold diggers, the investors, and the politicians. And you started on something of a rant yesterday. You have an opinion about that, so.
You want me to basically say that Startup Fest is lame and...
I would never ask you to do that, no. But feel free to express your opinion.
My issue about what's happening with Startup Fest and all those initiatives is that our government, and we all pay taxes for, is using that money to get big corporations into the Netherlands, label them as startups and give all kinds of boring conferences about that, while they might offer jobs, but they are highly competing with talent. So and I don't mind competing, but I do mind if Uber is stealing away really talented local designers, where other in the Netherlands-based companies can better utilize that talent, in my opinion. At least they have a bigger color palette to work with. Anyway, I just don't think it's fair that governmental money is used to bring big corporations here for tax reasons. So yeah, you can better help support your locals, in my opinion.
And did you get any support?
No, we did it all by ourselves.
Yeah.
No.
Which is fine, right? Yeah,
Which
it's
is great.
just the competition
It's
that
the
you don't
best.
like.
You learn the best by doing, in that sense. And yeah, at some point, becoming bigger, growing as a company, you have to deal with politics, but it's better to stay away from it.
All right. So one last question. There's a company in the Netherlands called 22 Tracks, which we both know and enjoy a lot, where they have a very simple concept. And I think WeTransfer is also a similar product where you took something that was complex, made it really simple. And I always wondered if you don't wake up in the middle of the night and then suddenly you go like, oh, here's another market that's really complicated that I can make simple. Do you see opportunities that you're not going after yourself, or maybe you are, where you can say to the audience, like, that's something you can simplify?
So in my 20s, I was really distracted and saw opportunities everywhere, and was also spread wide. And now I'm really, really focused, and because I turned 30, I'm really focused on going deep and really focus on making WeTransfer bigger, because it works so much better if you can apply all those learnings on a next opportunity you see. So that's my strategy right now.
Well, that's awful advice for these people.
No, and I think based in Europe, there's two lessons that I think I should have done or realized earlier. And as one thing, master your languages. If you master for English, for example, I speak Denglish, Dutch English. But if you really can properly speak English, you can tell a story better, and that will help you to realize whatever your adventure is. That's lesson one. And then I think you can always act global, and it's not where you're from, but it's where you're at. If you look at how Spotify, Booking, IGN, all are global businesses while they're in Europe, I think that proves that it's not a necessity to immediately move to Silicon Valley, and I think people should be proud of that.
Thank you, Nalden.